So now it's my sincere honor to introduce the next keynote speaker, Assistant Administrator for US EPA, Janet McCabe. Prior to her role as Assistant Administrator, Ms. McCabe served as the Office of Air and Radiation's Principal Deputy. Prior to joining EPA in November of 2009, she was Executive Director for Improving Kids' Environment at Children's Environmental Health Advocacy Organization based in Indianapolis, and was an adjunct faculty member at the Indiana University School of Medicine, Department of Public Health. Ms. McCabe has also held several leadership positions in the Indiana Department of Environmental Management's Office of Air Quality and was the office's Assistant Commissioner. She has also served as Assistant Attorney General for Environmental Protection for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Assistant Secretary for Environmental Impact Review. Please join me in welcoming Janet.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks, everybody. It is really, really nice to be in San Diego, not only because when would you turn down the opportunity to do 2 cross-country flights in the space of 24 hours? I mean, really, you get so much done. But really, to be with all of you. You know, I think all humans are incredibly self-focused, right? We walk around in our little selves and we think that what we're doing is the most important thing, and it's just the way it is. And I also feel like I think if I know something, that everybody else must know it too. But we know that that's not right, and I tell myself, as I'm doing my thing every day at EPA, that what we're doing at EPA, while incredibly important, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing on things, we are not the most important thing out there. There are thousands and thousands of people like you working every day in the things that you do, all pushing in the same direction to deal with this threat of climate change. And it was really inspiring and such a pleasure to be able to listen to you, John, speak on behalf of an incredibly visionary state, a state with a lot of power to do good, and with the vision and commitment to do that. And that makes me feel that the stuff that we're doing at EPA is part of a really, really big movement. And even if you're not lucky enough to have been elected treasurer of the largest state in the United States, or lucky enough, as I've been for the last 7 years, to be at EPA at this incredibly amazing time under the leadership of 2 leaders, the president and the administrator, who really could not be more committed to this cause. But everything that you're doing, wherever it is just as important. And we won't get there without all of this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If there's one thing you take away from my little talk today, it's such appreciation for the work that you do and a recognition of how important it is. And EPA acting assistant administrators will come and go, but the commitment among people in this country to do this important work has got to keep going. And organizations like this really make that happen. So people usually want to hear about what's going on at EPA and for this audience in the climate space. And so I'm happy to talk to you a little bit about that. I'll start by, since I understand this is the 14th year for this conference, so way to go, you guys. That's hard to sustain. But perhaps it's gotten bigger every year, I don't know, given the increased recognition of this issue as one of the most critical ones we're facing. I would hope that it has gotten bigger. But if you think back to 14 years ago, how far we've come on this work since then, it's really sort of amazing. And I can't help always adding air quality into the mix here, because that's what we do at the Office of Air and Radiation, and the two things are pretty inseparable. But over the last 14 years, or indeed over the last 40, air pollution in this country has come down by 70%. The economy has grown. California is both the I think the poster child and the leading shining star of both of those trends. We're so proud of what the state of California has been able to accomplish, and the way it has pushed the rest of the country and industry and internationally, really, the move to making a difference in air quality and climate has been such an incredible role. Over the last 14 years, and here very recently, the energy system is changing radically. The statistics just keep getting more and more dramatic and encouraging of how the prices are coming down and how the project starts are going up in wind and solar or other renewable projects, how energy efficiency is really taking hold. You know, this is not the days where it was sort of a laughable thing to think about putting your sweater on in the winter. I mean, we are so far beyond that in terms of how we think about energy efficiency that it's really stunning. And again, California leading companies out here, leading the way in technology and just no-brainer activities. As was mentioned, I have spent a fair amount of time in the middle of the country. In fact, that's where my home is now. And I go into any place in California, and just the energy efficiency that you see built into the infrastructure doesn't exist in the rest of the country, in case you didn't know that, or in lots of places it doesn't. We need to get it out there and into those systems, and that's happening more and more and more. And picking up on one of John's themes, one of the commitments of this administration is to make sure that the benefits of that cleaner energy economy, which is coming to all of us, are shared by everybody, including our more overburdened communities, lower income people for whom their energy costs are a significant burden. And if we're saving energy all over the place, we need to be saving it for those people as well, so that they can benefit from this. This is an incredibly exciting time with so much happening. So, EPA and climate. Before I get into the regulatory things that we're working on, I want to note and make sure that you guys are aware of a report that came out a couple of weeks ago from the U.S. government, our climate change and health assessment. I hope people are familiar with that. If not, I would really commend it to you. A couple of years ago, I went to some of my staff and I said, where do you go to find information about what impact climate change is actually going to have on people's health? And they said, well, that doesn't really exist, but we're working on it. So the federal agencies that are all working on climate change issues recently put out a very large report, very nicely separated into various chapters, where they brought together all the research that has been done on the expected impacts of climate change on health, on various aspects of health. And it is a sobering report. In fact, I sort of hesitate to even pick it up and read it, because you sort of feel like you want to jump out the window when you're done. But how important it is for people to actually have this information, read it, and see it. Not that it's going to convince anybody who doesn't already understand that these are serious issues, but let's face it, that's most of us by now. And for us to have specific information about what this is going to do to air quality, what it's going to do to the habitat for mosquitoes and ticks that bring disease, what it's going to do for allergen seasons in terms of people who suffer from that, what it's going to do as a result of flooding and displacement of people, what it's going to do in terms of mental health. People need to have that information so that they can talk to one another and be continually inspired that this is something that we have to do. So if you haven't seen that, I would really commend it to you. Another key takeaway from that report is the conclusion that everybody in this country is already affected to one degree or another by climate change. And certainly over the coming years, everybody will be. For some people, it's quite extreme at this point. If you live in Alaska, you're seeing it every day. But if you live on the coast, you're also worried about it. And even in the middle of the country where I live, it is present and among us. So if we need inspiration, there it is. So at EPA, and particularly in the Office of Air and Radiation, we have a number of things going on. We have had a number of things going on. We have a fairly hefty to-do list for the rest of 2016, but of course many of the actions that are underway will extend past 2016 and into the coming years. A lot of this was brought together in the President's Climate Action Plan, which he issued in 2013, which had assignments for almost every agency across the federal government to do work on the issue of climate change. And as John so eloquently explained, the state's banker, the nation's banker, there are things that those agencies can and should be doing on this issue. But of course, at EPA, we have a pretty clear list of things to do. We have very clear direction from the U.S. Supreme Court that greenhouse gases are an air pollutant that endanger public health and welfare. That has unlocked the responsibility for us to go forward with a number of regulatory actions. The cornerstone, from my perspective, of the President's Climate Action Plan is the Clean Power Plan. The Clean Power Plan, which for the first time ever is requiring carbon reductions from existing fossil-fired power plants, the companion rule being the rule for new sources, should they be built in the future, to meet aggressive carbon standards. I'm sure that you know that rule, which was finalized last summer, is in the midst of a tornado of litigation. People are lining up on both sides. I would say that many people, including many states, are lining up on the side of defending the Clean Power Plan. And this was certainly a disappointment and a surprise to us, and I think to many people. The Supreme Court made the decision to stay the rule while it is going through all these court challenges up through the time when all of that is finished. I want to be very careful and clear to emphasize that EPA is absolutely respecting the stay that the court put in place. This is not the first time that an EPA rule, and indeed an EPA power plant rule, has been stayed while litigation has been going on. These are very important rules, and they have a lot of implications, and I can understand, although as I say, I'm disappointed that the court decided that was the appropriate thing to do here. But back in time, when EPA issued a rule called the NOx SIP call, and then also with the Clean Air Interstate Rule, the Cross-State Air Pollution Rule. The court stayed those rules while they were going through challenge. The rules were ultimately upheld, and they are now being implemented. So we consider this to be a pause. No court has spoken to the substance of the Clean Power Plan, and we are absolutely confident that it will withstand legal scrutiny. We have been so careful over the years at EPA during this administration to make sure that our rules are squarely within our legal authorities and are founded on an absolutely solid factual record. And we think that that's the case here. So we look forward to that being resolved as quickly as possible. The briefing is all completed now. The oral argument will take place in the DC Circuit in early June. We hope to have a decision as early as the end of the summer or early fall. And certainly I expect that will then lead to Supreme Court challenges, which will go into 2017. In the meantime, the stay does not stay the states from who want to go forward with their climate activities, and California certainly is doing that. Many other states are as well. California isn't the only one. It doesn't stay you guys from doing the kinds of things that you do every day on climate issues. It doesn't stay EPA from being available to help states and others as they move forward with climate activities. And we've been very clear that we're prepared to do that. We are still working with states that have expressed an interest in continuing to think about the Clean Power Plan even while the stay is in place. And as an example of that, last week we sent over to the Office of Management and Budget for interagency review a proposal on the Clean Energy Incentive Program, which was the piece of the Clean Power Plan that we finalized last summer that provided a sort of run-up to the, even before the compliance period starts in 2022, an opportunity for wind and solar projects and energy efficiency projects in low-income areas to get credit under that program if they start early. So that's generated a lot of interest out there in the energy world and among communities and state governments. So we don't want to lose any time, and we'll be getting a proposal out there quite soon for people to look at. Another aspect of the Clean Power Plan that people are very interested in us not losing momentum on is the model trading rules. We put out a proposal. We often do this for states that are charged with putting plans in place to implement federal requirements, as we put out model rules, and we got a lot of comment on those model rules. We don't want to lose momentum on that. So we'll be doing that, moving that forward this summer. We also have a lot of other things going on. We're focused on methane significantly, very potent climate pollutant. We have rules following up on our 2012 first set of rules on oil and gas activities. We will have another set of rules coming out very soon addressing methane and covering more aspects of the oil and gas industry, very meaningful in terms of emissions reductions. And we know, as information has been coming in on this industry in particular, that the emissions from this industry are higher than we have thought and are growing at a pretty big clip. This is something that many states are active on as well as the Bureau of Land Management. Hydrofluorocarbons, another extremely potent climate pollutant. We're working both domestically and internationally to achieve reductions of HFCs. These are chemicals that have been brought in as a replacement for the chemicals that we knew were damaging the ozone layer. So these were replacement chemicals, but many of them have very, very significant global warming potential. So we need to keep the process going for replacing those climate unfriendly pollutants with ones that are more friendly. So working towards an amendment to the International Montreal Protocol this year is a very high priority of the administration's, as well as moving forward through our domestic regulatory program with another couple of rules. Many of you maybe were fortunate to be at the Paris talks. I got to be there for a little bit. It was amazing. The momentum that was present there was just amazing. It was my first COP I've ever been to, and everybody had been telling me how grim and depressing they are, and how everybody hated the United States because we would never do anything, and it wasn't really like that, which was awesome. And I really think that the leadership of the United States and the many states who were there, because many states came over, and the many American corporations that were over there being very clear that this is not only a moral imperative, it's a business imperative, really tipped the scales. So we are very engaged in the aftermath of the Paris Agreement, and I think we'll have a chance to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. So I want to just close with one other reference to the climate and health report that I mentioned a minute ago. I mentioned that one of the chapters of it is about mental health and the adverse impacts that dealing with the uncertainty of climate change and the reality of climate change can have significant impacts on mental health. And we see that every time that there's a disaster that people need to cope with that could result in property loss, impacts on health, loss of life, and all those sorts of things, displacement or whatever. But there's one part of it that says that there's actually a positive aspect for some people in the mental health department, which is when you get engaged in something that's really meaningful to you and you feel like you're making a difference, that actually can have a positive impact. And I think we've probably all, if not experienced that ourselves, seen it in our kids or others that we know, when people come together for a cause and actually are able to do things that make a difference and can see that they are making a difference, that is an inspiration and a positive thing in and of itself. So that's what I feel like this room is full of, and we all need to go out and spread that wealth and pay that forward in everything that we do. Thank you again so much for everything that you do every day. If there's a way that EPA can help you in your activities with information or conversation or helping to convene people to have a conversation, please do get in touch with us, because we all have to use the particular skills and resources that we have, and EPAs are at your disposal for this important work. Thank you again very much, and I look forward to the next session.